You're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to RBLR Lightning. As always, my name is Jake Ricker. Alongside me, it's Joe Zamataro, Matt Gannon. Guys, welcome back to the show. We are officially in off-season mode. We've got a lot to talk about, though, as we had our exit interviews. We got some players making some rosters and some new signings to talk about, as JBB has wasted absolutely no time in starting his off-season checklist and getting some things done. But first and foremost, guys, how you doing today?
Doing well, thank you very much. How you doing, Matt?
I'm happy to be back after conveniently being sick for last week's show. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm happy to be back. I'm really upset that I missed that show, but I think it's better that I kept those emotions in. I might have been a little off the rails there.
That's what the problem is, man. You keep in those emotions, it makes you sick. It just makes you sick when you keep them. You got to express yourself, let it out.
I was physically ill. I mean, I think that's what it might have been. So I think I'll have some opinions for this show.
Well, we're glad to have you back. We're excited to get into things because there is still a decent amount to talk about. I think the first thing that we should quickly mention is that Nick Perbix is going to be playing for Team USA at the 2023 IHF Men's World Championship, which will take place on May 12th through the 28th. So a big congratulations to Nick Perbix for making Team USA. Always nice to see the Lightning guys representing their nation when in all of these different tournaments. I honestly can't keep up with all the different ones that they have. It gets a little confusing, but a big accomplishment for Nick Perbix, and hopefully this will give him a chance to continue to show off his skill and improve his game, as he was really good for the Lightning down the stretch in this season.
He also played for the Olympic team the last time they played. Of course, no NHL players were allowed to play in the most recent Olympics and the past ones, but just being able to make that roster, even with no NHL players, is still a huge credit. I mean, Nick Perbix, he is a defenseman in the making. He is blossoming.
All right, now
it's gonna be good to have him for years to come. What a find.
Braden Point has been nominated for an award. He has been nominated for the Lady Byng Memorial Trophy. Guys, I want to ask you this. Do you think Braden Point has a shot at winning this award? I mean, can't remember the last time Point was up for, I think it's the first time he's ever been up for the Lady Byng. And we've talked about some of the Lightning players, that deserve to be up for awards, but they often get overlooked because of how good the team is overall, and just that,
Cooper.
Right, exactly. I was going to say John Cooper, for example. He gets overlooked because it's like, the Lightning have so many good players, but let's be honest, John Cooper absolutely deserves a Jack Adams award. So do you think Braden Point actually does have a shot at winning the Lady Byng Memorial Trophy this year?
I think he's got a chance. The way I hear it described a lot, of course, it's not, literally this, but I hear it as the Selke 2 trophy. It's the Selke trophy for a little bit more offensive-minded players. I hear that a lot. Because essentially, I think the way that the actual title is, it's the trophy awarded to the player that exhibits sportsmanship, blah, 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 blah. Essentially,
gentlemanly play.
Yes. Essentially, it's just who doesn't take a lot of penalties and is a good player. And Braden Point versus the other two candidates on that, he's got the lowest penalty differential by points. He's a clear winner, I think. Of course, you can't really put stats to it, but I think it's tough competition, but I think he's got a stronger case than the others.
So I do like the controversy surrounding it, though. While his penalty minutes are lower, he actually has 7 total. 5 of those were for fighting, which, ironically enough, is he fought his teammate. Well, it wasn't his teammate at the time, but it was Eyssimont that he ended up fighting. Which we'll talk more about him a little bit later, but for Braden Point, maybe that hurts his chances, even though, a lot of the fights that you see in the NHL are about the most gentlemanly fights you could possibly have, with having respect for your opponent. I mean, I can't remember how many fights Braden Point's been in, but it can't be more than 2 or 3, right? That wasn't his
I
first.
think
Not a
Braden
lot.
Point's got a couple of fights under his
Does he?
belt. He's around 5 or 6, I want to say. He can chuck them. Like I
Every
wouldn't put
once
it
in a while, when
over
he gets
his-
really angry, he'll jump in and start throwing some big punches, but it's not often. It's rare to get under points.
But if it's a penalty like that, do you think that hurts his chances, in the sense that it's not just like a hook, or even better, a delay a game by sending the puck out of play?
It definitely might hurt. I don't know if Kopitar has any fights this season, but I do think that might be taken into account.
We also have to take into account the X factor of that he plays for Tampa.
And right, absolutely. Well, and see, this is why though I think he does have a chance, because listen, I said when in the exit interviews, which we're going to get to in a little bit here, Point was talking about the hit that he took in the Leafs game where he went into the boards and he fractured a rib, by the way. It was a very serious injury. And Point, I know he was friends, with some of the Toronto players, but he basically was sitting there saying, it wasn't that bad of a hit. I didn't think it was super dirty. And I'm going, I cannot believe he had no problems with that hit whatsoever. And then moments later, he gets nominated for the Lady Byng. So something tells me he was trying to play nice there to make himself look good for this trophy. So
We're really breaking out the tinfoil hats.
I mean, come on, you're going to get thrown into the board, you fracture your rib, and you're not going to throw him under the bus even a little bit, even if it's your friend. I don't know, but I hope he wins it. I hope he's got a good shot at it. He deserves a chance to win it. There's a lot of good candidates for that award. It's probably the hardest one to pick a clear winner in, because it is so subjective, like you were just talking about, Joe. Like, does a fight count more than a delay of game penalty or something like that? How do you really determine good sportsmanship? I don't know, but I would like to think he's got a good shot at it, and having the least amount of penalty minutes, even if he does have a fight in there, does help him. Maybe Eyssimont can vouch for him, because they're now teammates. He's like, that was just
he pulled his punches. It wasn't that bad.
Right, exactly. Well, speaking of Eyssimont, JBB quickly got to work in his off-season checklist, and Eyssimont is officially coming back as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning, signing a 2-year contract with the average annual salary of $800,000. So a fantastic signing, I would say, for the Lightning and JBB, getting Eyssimont on a 2-year, very cheap. It's that long-term that JBB loves to, well, it's not long-term in like 8, 5, 6 years, but still 2 years at such a low cap hit gives so much value to the Lightning, especially where they are in a cap crunch once again this year, and they might have to lose some key aspects. And the way we saw Eyssimont play, especially in that last round against the Toronto Maple Leafs, he looked great, and I think he's worth more than $800,000.
I mean, it's a great bridge deal. It's a one-way contract, which should be pointed out too. So when you're saying that he's coming back to the Lightning, it's not like he can be sent down without clearing waivers, and there's no way that he's going to be clearing waivers. Someone will pick him up for sure, especially after seeing what he brought in those 3 playoff. Was he in 3 or 4 playoff games that he played in? If you look at players like Verhage and Marchessault, players that played on the Lightning but didn't have, they weren't able to really graduate into a top 6 role. Reason is that the Lightning have such good talent up top that it's really hard to have enough space for those guys to bloom. And this is one of those types of players. So a 2-year deal, bridge deal, is great for him to see where he can be. And if we can't get him into like a top 6 spot and he's really blossoming, you can use him as, as trade potential, and keep finding more talent. This is kind of it's like the system that the Lightning use in order to bring talent on board. You find someone that's underpaid and overperforming, pull him in, make him call Tampa home, and then see how he flourishes, and rinse and repeat. And it's worked really well for the Lightning thus far.
This is a great value deal. Locking him up at $800,000 for 2 years. I mean, that's as good of a deal as the Lightning will get. I mean, Eyssimont should probably start looking for new agents. I would assume he could have made 1.5 just the way he played for the Lightning. I've not heard anybody say a bad word about him. A lot of people compare him to a little bit of a Yanni Gourde type player, and I see that a lot. He's just a buzzsaw, honey badger type of player, just doesn't care, punches above his weight class. So I'm super excited to have him. He will be a roster player for the next 2 years as long as we've got him. And this is also a rare scenario where it's where two teams, trade players, and it works out well for both teams. It seems like Vlad Nemesnikov had a really strong end to his season in Winnipeg. He was putting up points. He was being played in a top 6 role. And Eyssimont, he was playing great for the Lightning. Again, haven't heard a bad word about him. He's just an injection of life into the bottom 6 for that lineup for the Lightning. But both players benefiting their teams that they got traded to, you don't see that very often. So you got to be, happy for Nemesnikov, to flourish in a new role.
And for Eyssimont, he's coming to a team that's got the pedigree that we talk about over and over again. This is about as good of an opportunity as you possibly can get for him. So taking less now to potentially make significantly more later and be a bigger impact player in your career, it's a brilliant move by JBB to recognize that's what he has in Eyssimont. And it's a smart move for Eyssimont to stick with a club that, we're so fortunate to be Lightning fans because they're going to keep coming every season with a solid team.
I have to wonder too, even if Eyssimont is sitting there and talking to JBB and they're saying, listen, you take less money for the next 2 years. Let's go out there and continue to field a very competitive team as they have in the past couple of years. And then if you continue to produce, we'll give you a nice bigger contract. And if it works out that way, when some of the guys, inevitably end up retiring down the road or whatever it may be. So I think Eyssimont could be looking at this too. Like, I love this Lightning organization. They've built up that kind of reputation that maybe even he took a little bit of a discount. Like you were saying, Matt, he could probably get 1.5 on the open market potentially. Who knows? But it's a great signing by JBB nonetheless. No question about it. Very money well spent, I would say. Which reminds me, by the way, guys, I'm today, but you know where else you can spend your money extremely well? By heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out the awesome inspired merch for each of the teams, the Lightning, Rays, Bucks, Rowdies. We've got it all. Go check it out, the inspired merch. There's some awesome stuff over there. And the best part for you guys, talking about money well spent, you can use code BOLTS for 10% off of your order. So be sure to head over to shop.rblrsports.com and check out all of the awesome inspired merch we have over there. Links, as always, are in the description. You can find it on our social media pages as well. If you're not on YouTube, by the way, make sure you head over there to check us out, like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on these future episodes. But a great signing from JBB.
What a great transition from Jake.
I appreciate it. It's that's my Eyssimont is really good at bringing the energy. That's my main goal here. It's what I bring to the table, the transitions. All right, I think the biggest thing we have to talk about in today's episode is the exit interviews. And guys, I think there were a lot of interesting things said in these exit interviews. Let's start with JBB, and let's start with the one that I think interests everybody the most, and that's the injuries the Lightning were dealing with during the first round of the playoffs. And I'll list them off here. So Jeannot was dealing with a high ankle sprain. Eyssimont had concussion-like symptoms. Now, he didn't have them while he was playing. Obviously, this is why he missed those couple of games that he did. Eric Chernak was dealing with a concussion. He wouldn't have been cleared by the time round 2 had started, but he is progressing. Hedman was dealing with a hip impingement. I don't even know what that is.
Impingement.
I don't think I even said that right. And then Point had a rib cage cartilage fracture. So not as many injuries as you would have had, the years past, just because the Lightning made deeper runs, but still some pretty significant injuries. And I think the biggest one for me is Point with the rib cage cartilage fracture. I mean, the fact that guy took that shot in the board, looked like he was in serious pain, and then came back out and kept playing the same game with a fractured rib is just unbelievable to me. I really don't know how you do it.
I mean, they're hockey players, man. They're
it's
hockey
built
players.
into them.
Yeah.
They're tough. They're tough guys. Hearing what McDonough played through, like a broken hand or a broken foot, like what these guys go through for their team is amazing. The unfortunate part is that I think that pretty much all of these injuries. The Jeannot one obviously happened just before the season ended, but they're almost like targeted injuries or just dangerous play by Toronto. Take out the players if you can't make the play, and it's unfortunate that they were big. Point they're big players that got hurt. Point obviously he was not quite the same. Victor Hedman played exceptionally well, I thought, despite having this, but there's no way you can have a hip impingement without it affecting you on some sort of level. And then Chernak not being on the ice, I think, is probably the number one thing that affected defense for the Lightning. Those were, big injuries.
Major.
But for Braden Point, man, that's, getting up. He said, what'd he say in, that he got the wind knocked out of him, and there's no way that he could keep skating down the ice. He just, brought him to his knees. And then I think he went through a concussion protocol just to double check that there wasn't anything else wrong, and he was fine. But that's a warrior, man.
Every single one of those is just gruesome as hell. It's amazing that any of them played through whatever they had, with the exception of Chernak. So, I mean, yeah, it's just hockey players. It's just built into them. It runs in their blood. But you have to imagine that there were some other guys on the team that, weren't, stated, that were also battling something, maybe just not something significant enough to be stated. But we have to imagine there were probably some other people with some ailments.
Yeah, the injury report doesn't list contusions. Nobody's going to put a bruise on their medical forms, right? But if you get hit over and over and over blocking shots, I mean, oof, you wake up sore. You're sore for days. You feel sick. You can't hydrate enough to flush your body out. It wears on you.
Yeah, there's no way Sergachev was even close to 30%. I mean, how many times did he limp off the ice or block a huge shot or something? I mean, the team definitely did lay it out on the line. Like, they know when playoff hockey starts, and they know how to transition to play that type of game. And they everybody made sacrifices. It's just unfortunate that it was out of our control.
And I think it might be obvious, but I think it should be stated anyway. Nobody would blame these guys if they weren't playing with these injuries. I mean, especially Braden Point with the fractured rib. Like, no one would be sitting there saying, "Oh, come on, you can tough that out." Like, it's impressive that they are willing to do that kind of thing, to stay in the game and try to win these games.
It makes me wonder a little bit how much pressure Braden Point put on himself after what happened last year in the playoffs with being injured, and how badly he wanted to come back and be on the ice so he can contribute. And I mean, it's obviously a testament to his will just to fight to win.
Well, I think that conversation will come back up when we start talking about Vasilevsky and his exit interview, because he had some interesting thoughts about his rest in dealing with his body and pressure and that kind of things. But I want to stick with JBB right now as we go through these guys. There were some other things that he said. He was talking about that he called this a missed opportunity for the Lightning, which, is understandable. The Lightning are in a position where they are contenders. If they don't win the Stanley Cup, it's a lost season for them. That's their goal every single year, because that's how good they are. He also talked about that every decision we're going to make between now and the start of next season will be made with an eye towards making sure that we're a Stanley Cup contender, not only the next year, but beyond. So clearly stating that the Lightning have no intentions of putting themselves into a small rebuild or anywhere near the future. They are still in cup contending mode for years to come, because, let's be honest, they still have that core intact for many years to come.
Yeah, and actually, JBB was on the Block Party. If you haven't listened to that podcast, there's usually some great guests. And I just listened to this one today, as a matter of fact, with him. And, he brought up, or actually one of the hosts brought up, in the last 10 years, 9 times going to the playoffs, all the accolades. Was it 6 times going to the conference finals, 3 appearances in the Stanley Cup finals, 2 cups. And
here, I have it pulled up right here for you, Joe. As I pulled it was really impressive. So in the last 10 years, 4 Stanley Cup appearances, back-to-back Stanley Cup wins, 9 playoff appearances, 18 playoff series wins, and you can throw a bunch of conference finals appearances in there as well. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
And what he says is none of that matters. That doesn't matter at all. Those past accolades, that this coming year, and it'll always be for this coming year. He's striving to put a team on the ice that can win a cup, and you don't hang your hat on what you've done in the past. And it was impressive the way that the way that he put it and worded it on the block party, and it shows the type of mentality that JBB has, and the just the sense of the team overall. That this is a missed opportunity, because every year they're really hoping to assemble the team that can compete for the cup.
I've seen a couple of people that are saying like, well, it's over. They should probably blow it up now. But I think that's completely idiotic. Everybody is still in their primes. I mean, Vasilevsky and Kucherov, they're not even 30 yet. Mikhail Sergachev is still just a baby. He's 24. I mean, there are guys still not even hitting their prime yet, like Sergachev. So I think a long summer will probably do them some good. I know I kind of said that earlier this year on the show. I didn't predict it or anything, but I said it won't be such a bad thing if they do bow out early in the playoffs. They can rest up a little bit. You know, they've played so much hockey, so hopefully it can, give them a little bit more energy through the whole season, next season, not playing so much hockey. But I do think it's a good idea to still keep the team together. I mean, it's worked in the past to keep the team together. Of course, the voices saying blow it up haven't been super loud, but I'm just happy, everybody's on the same page, especially the guy that matters the most, JBB, keeping everything intact and trying to stay competitive.
And something else that I believe he said in the exit interview is that this is probably going to be the most difficult offseason that he's had to face because of cap issues. And while, there was a lot of movement that he had to do in past postseasons, this one is going to be tough for just the sheer number of players that he needs to sign. So he's got a lot of work ahead of him. And again, with the Eyssimont signing, it's good to knock the first one out and get it at such a low rate that it opens up more cap space for the other players that you have to sign.
I believe the Lightning are going to have about $8 million. It kind of depends on how much the cap jumps, because there's all those question marks with that. It's been going up $1 million per year. We don't know if it's actually going to jump as much as we're hoping this year. There's all of that to think about, but it's believed the Lightning are going to have about $8 million in cap space, and they still have to sign Killorn, Colton, multiple other guys in the minors as UFAs, and a couple other. Brian Elliott's up for contract as well. Corey Perry, Belmar. There's a lot of guys to sign, and $8 million may sound like a lot, but it's not, especially when you got to sign guys like Alex Killorn, who, Matt, you were talking about. A lot of guys in their prime right now. Alex Killorn just had his best season ever. He had 27 goals, 37 assists, and 64 points, which broke a record for him in each of those categories, the most in his career. And in his exit interview, a lot of the reporters asked him, do you want to leave Tampa? Do you see yourself staying? Things like that. And Killorn's answer, no. Killorn absolutely wants to stay. Now, we kind of knew this about Killorn because if you guys remember during the expansion draft, some people were talking about potentially trading Killorn to Seattle to protect some of the other players. And Killorn was like, I would rather retire than get traded. So we've known that he loves it here in Tampa Bay, and he talked a lot about that in his exit interview, that he really enjoys this team, the culture, just everything about Tampa, and he does not want to leave. And JBB mentioned this as well, that he knows it's going to be difficult at Killorn. That's going to help him knowing that Killorn wants to stay. And I think, to me, that says he'll take that hometown discount.
We'll see. We can do a whole show. I know we're going to probably do a couple of shows on just the salary cap and how to balance it all. But honestly, I think fans need to prepare for that one not coming together. I don't think we'll be able to offer Killorn the money that he commands.
Sure. All right. I'll meet you guys in the middle. I think it happens. I think we do sign Killorn. I think we're going to give him a fair amount of money, though. I just hope they keep it short term. But the way that Killorn has said it for not just this year, but pretty much his entire career, or at least when trade speculation and signing speculation started around Killorn, like maybe we should trade him. He's always gone on record saying, "I want to stay in Tampa. I want to retire in Tampa." I mean, do you really think he's going to give up his jet ski You really think he's going to go play for St. Louis? I mean, come on.
No.
If he goes to another team, it'll be the Panthers or the LA Kings. I mean, he is not getting rid of his jet ski.
Okay, that's a fair point. He's got to go somewhere. It's going. And honestly, I bet he retires if they can't work out a deal for some reason. I could see him retiring. He loved. I mean, look, he said he would retire if he was going to get traded just last year. I don't think there is any reason Killorn would leave Tampa Bay. I think that he's ride or die with the Lightning, which is great to see, by the way. And speaking of players that have that similar mentality, Steven Stamkos, when they were talking with him in his exit interview, he is now going into the last year of his current deal. So he'll be a unrestricted free agent next offseason. And reporters did ask him about that. And Stamkos said, I see myself only ever wearing one jersey, which of course is the Bolts blue, which again is great to hear as a Lightning fan. I think it really speaks to Jeff Vinik and this entire organization and this amazing culture that they have built here, that players love to play here. They love to come down here and they don't want to leave. I'm pretty sure every player we're going to talk about today in the exit interviews was like, yes, I'd like to stay. I mean, how often do you hear about that where every player is like, no, I really like it here. I want to stay 100%. So Stamkos was talking about that. The most interesting thing to me about Stamkos' exit interview, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, is his conversation on the rest aspect. Because, Matt, you were talking about it earlier. Some people are saying, well, it's maybe a good thing the Lightning were out early. They're actually going to get some rest down because they've been playing so much hockey. It's been a conversation for the last 3 years now. And Stamkos, he kind of took both. He's kind of said both sides, but he was saying that, of course, he wishes they were still playing. And he says that the guys have kind of acclimated to playing a lot of hockey, that this almost throws them off more. But he did acknowledge later that it will be nice to get some rest. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on Stamkos' comments for the rest debate.
It's definitely it definitely calms the nerves hearing him say, this is the only jersey I want to wear. I do think it is a little bit looser than, what Killorn has stated, but this is all just speculation, just kind of pulling this out of my hat. But I don't know, it does comfort me a little bit. It's like seeing your ex with somebody else. You don't want to see your franchise face for the better part of almost for 15 years or so. You don't want to see them on another team, especially a rival team or something like that. And I don't think he would want to see himself. I do think, of course, next year, depending on performance, but I think he will have to take a discount. It's crazy that the summer of Stamkos is already, almost behind us. It's already been the full length of the contract almost, but I don't know. I do think he will probably retire a Bolt. There's no way a player like that, a person like that, would, I don't know. I know it's happened. Wayne Gretzky got traded. Anybody can get traded or leave a team, but to me, I just don't. Just like Killorn, I don't see him wearing a different jersey, just like you said.
Well, I think it'll come down to what sort of numbers JBB can come up with for this summer, and then how the salary cap moves. For next, and who knows, maybe it ends up being another bridge deal just to see if the salary cap continues to increase before paying them a little bit more. But regarding his comments about being tired, I think it was also him, about being tired, not retired. I think it was also him that mentioned that the guys this playoff series had all the energy in the world. They were ready to go. They didn't feel they felt well rested enough in terms of the skaters. They felt like they had like the shortened off seasons that they've had haven't affected them, and they were putting effort out and were proud of their play. And when you look at the way that the series went against Toronto, Tampa carried the play for the vast majority of the ice time. It's just when Toronto got their chances, they buried them, and they buried more than the Lightning did. So Stamkos, I think it was Stamkos that said it, saying that everyone's got that sort of intensity in the locker room coming into the playoffs. They'll get a little bit more rest, but they're conditioned for it. These guys are they've done it over and over again, know what it takes, and keep coming back hard. So it's not surprising to hear him say those sort of things in his exit.
Well, speaking of rest and continuing with that conversation, Vasilevsky had some interesting comments on the subject as well. Vasilevsky talked about his dealing with rest, and he said that basically after the first 35 games, he didn't feel like himself, and he said that he wasn't on the same page as his body, is the way that he put it. And he was dealing with a lot of little injuries, and that he was really pushing himself, and that he thinks he probably could have managed that a lot better, which was interesting to hear, especially after this is a little bit of a different situation. But you look at the one Toronto game where they put up 7 goals, and Cooper had said he asked Vasilevsky if he wants to come out. Of course, Vasi said no. But to me, his comments in the exit interview were, maybe I should have come out, taken a breather, taken some rest, and throughout the entire regular season, because we very rarely ever see Vasilevsky get pulled, because he has got that mentality and that relationship with Cooper where he can say, no, I want to go, and Cooper will leave him in there. But it sounds like Vasilevsky has finally realized, for some people, because I know this is a big topic for them, is that he's playing way too much, and he needs to take a little bit off so he can be 100% every single time he comes out there in plays. And he was talking about that he wants to be better for next season. He's going to take this information that he's learned and try to be better next season, which again blows my mind, because this guy is already the best goaltender in the NHL.
What an incredibly mature and candid thing to say to on your exit interview. It's great to see somebody that, like you said, is so good at his craft continue to improve and find ways that he can edge a little bit above the rest. And sometimes taking a couple of nights off is what you need to heal your body. He was saying in it that, maybe it was like a little bit of a groin that wasn't feeling 100%, or a knee that wasn't feeling 100%. And slowly these things affected him throughout the rest of the season. And we were saying it for the majority of the season, and including the playoffs, he was good, but he wasn't Vasi good. And let's see what happens in this offseason if he gets rested and starts playing smart in terms of managing his minutes. I've talked a lot about managing minutes, especially for our lower 6 guys, to make sure they're well rested, and to see him do the same is it lets you know that he's not on a downslope. This was but maybe a hiccup in his career from his normal numbers, and he's going to continue to work on it and improve.
Yeah, it's good that he's cognizant of, the situation that maybe he might be overplaying and overstressing himself. Of course, it does come down to the coach's decision on, to play him or not to play him, who's going to be starting. But at the same time, it's like, this is Vasilevsky. You can, Cooper trying to pull him. No, I'm not coming out. He's got his fair say on what is and will not happen. But I don't know. It's good that he's aware of that. Hopefully he can be a little bit better of managing and trying to tough out the whole regular season. But I do think we're probably going to see him in less games next year. Of course, it's not going to be, an extreme amount. Let's say, within, 5 to 7 less games possibly, because I do think we're going to see the emergence of Hugo Almefelt next season. I think Brian Elliott's going to sail into the sunset and retire. Thank you for your service, but he's getting a little old, and I think Almefelt's ready to maybe take that backup position. He had a really good year in Syracuse this year. Playoffs are a little different, but He did have a really good season in Syracuse. It doesn't always translate to the NHL. He's still a young goaltender, but the Lightning, over the last decade, they've really been known for being able to develop their goaltenders in Vasilevsky and Ben Bishop. Franz John, the goaltending coach, he's a goalie whisperer, so hopefully he can do the same with Hugo and maybe take a little bit of the load off of Vasilevsky next season if Hugo can perform at a adequate backup level.
And looking at the typical numbers, he only needs to perform at I think it's a 0.3 win percentage in order for the Lightning to have a chance to make the playoffs. So he's not demanding a lot out of your backup goalie. If he's at a 500 number, then that gives Vasi that much more ability to take a couple nights off and be ready to go for the next go around here.
Now, let's jump to Victor Hedman's comments in his exit interview. And, Hedman was talking about, of course, he suffered that injury, and we had said all year long that we thought Hedman could potentially be dealing with something. Hedman said that wasn't the case, that the injury that he suffered happened in game 1 of the playoffs, but he did talk about that once he got going, he felt just fine. And, that does make a lot of sense because Victor Hedman he played fantastic. And I think it was game 3, if I'm not mistaken, game 3 or 4, he looked really, really, really good. So he did have an injury that did bother him for a little bit there early in the series, but it wasn't something that happened during the regular season. And then he also spoke on Alex Killorn and that losing him would be a bummer. And they don't want to see that. They built a great relationship, but going back to that great chemistry that the Lightning have built over the years. But of course he understands at the end of the day, it is a business, but obviously would not like to lose Alex Killorn.
Shoot him up, he was good to go. Get that needle in the hip and skate away.
I think he might be the biggest beneficiary of having the longest off season. It seems like Hedman's been battling something for 3 years. It seems like since the bubble playoffs. I don't know if you guys remember it was not the play-in round, but the round robin round. He had a pretty nasty injury against the Flyers that game. And of course, he had a great playoff that year, but it seems like he's never really been able to shake these lower body injuries since then. That was really the most prominent one that I can remember. It seems like he just had stuff lingering with him the years following. So hopefully, he'll be the biggest beneficiary of a long summer.
Now, we kind of already talked about Braden Point in his comments on the hit that he took during the first round of the playoffs. But the other thing that he talked about in his exit interview was that, of course, it was disappointing for the guys to not make it out of round 1. And he was saying the hardest part for him was knowing that he didn't produce, which, again, I thought was interesting because he was dealing with a fractured rib. I mean, how can you expect him to produce a ton when you're dealing with a major injury like that? And he was still one of the top players on the Lightning when it came to points. Now, granted, not many of the guys had a ton of points just because there was only one round of games, but Point disappointed in himself, he said in his exit interview, thinking that he could have produced more in that first round.
It's hard to take it easy on yourself when you get a goal taken away from the refs that should have been a game-winning regulation goal. Then
I just started to forget about that one, Matt.
And Matt brought it right back up.
No further comment, but it's hard to be happy with yourself when you get jobbed like that. Sorry, Joe.
I think that maybe this is a continuation from last season's sentiments as well. Where he was injured, and it happened again where he was injured, and that frustration can definitely build. And he's such a dynamic, good player with his speed. What the Lightning are able to do for entering the zone, he's one of the guys that when he's down, it hurts more than if Stamkos or Hedman or Kucherov are down. It changes the Lightning more than any other player, I believe. And if he's not going 100%, he knows how much it has affected the team in ways that we don't always see on the ice. But it could be something as simple as getting into the zone on a power play, and it just isn't quite there for him. And he feels like he lets everyone down when he's not able to complete those plays. You got to feel for him. I mean, just straight up, you got to feel for him because the injuries that he sustained aren't injuries from jumping up after kicking a field goal and celebrating, and you blow out your ankle, like we've seen with some football players.
Now, Mikhail Sergachev was thrusted into a much larger role for the Lightning this year after losses of players like Ryan McDonagh because of the cap. So the Lightning needed him to step up after he signed a major contract. And guys, I would say he did just that. And Sergachev talked about how he felt during the season. He said that his comments kind of made me laugh because he basically said, I thought I improved. I thought I was better, but I think there's a lot I could do better. So it was a little bit of both. He was kind of all over the place, but Sergachev did say he did think he played better and he was getting better, but there's a lot more work for him to do. And then he also talked about that there's a reason he signed an 8-year deal with the Lightning. He thinks they can absolutely be competitive for many years to come, that he is in this for the long haul. So nice to hear from a young superstar in the making, that Sergachev, can really start to potentially make some waves here. And he knows he can still get better, even though he's really improved his game. And Cooper added to that later in his exit interview, saying that he hopes that reporters start pushing him for the conversation in the Norris Trophy, which is some high praise from Coach Cooper.
Yeah, if he keeps blossoming like he has been, he's been on a very steady trajectory, with, slight peaks and valleys, but essentially throughout his entire career, he's been on the up and up. And this season, it was a career season for him. He set new highs in total points. I don't think he set a high in the goal mark, but still, he had a tremendous improvement season all around, defensively, offensively. I mean, he took the number one spot on the power play. If he continues with that same trajectory, his name will be in that Norris conversation for hopefully years to come. But I do think that he still has so much room to grow. Like I was saying earlier, he's 24. I mean, he's older than me, but he's still just a child in the eyes of the world. He still has so much room to grow. I mean, your prime isn't till 26, 27, 28. He's still years away from that.
I was going to say easily 28 as a defenseman, because it's such a complex position to play in order to be able to read what's coming at you and where you need to be before the puck gets there. And with Sergachev, I don't want to say that this was a breakout year for him, but it was probably one that had one of the biggest growth years for him, especially when Hedman went down and he assumed the role on PP1. And then also he was logging the most minutes. And in the past, we'd have somebody else that could take those minutes off his hands, like McDonough, for instance. And this year it was Sergachev that was carrying the brunt of the load when Hedman was down. And then you could see that, he rose to the occasion. He played really well. He remained on power play 1 for a lot of the season. And he started to just develop further and play smarter overall. And, exactly like you said, Matt, he's young and he's definitely far from peaked.
It blows my mind every time we talk about him. And he's my age, 24 years old. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. He's getting better and better every year. He's a multimillionaire. He's a dad now. I mean, this guy, it's so impressive every time we talk about it. I cannot wait to see what he does in years to come. Now, the last 2 players we have to talk about, I'm going to kind of lump them together because I think they're in somewhat similar situations, but it's Corey Perry and PEB, Bellemare. And Corey Perry is an older veteran forward, but about what he's thinking for the rest of his career, as he's going to be a UFA this offseason as well. Corey Perry says he absolutely still has that drive to go out there and win a Stanley Cup. He wants to come back and compete again next year. And that, again, he would like for it to be with the Lightning, but he understands, the cap situation, and they'll see how things work out. And then for Bellemare, he's went through a lot this season. He had a lot of adversity that he had to fight through. You feel for the guy. It was a tough year for him. And he said that he felt like, he wasn't great. He wasn't himself. He was in his head with all the adversity that he had to deal with, but he started to play really well in the playoffs, which he absolutely did. But he said that he was kind of hoping they would go a little bit longer there. He had some more time to really show what he could bring to the table, because this year wasn't his normal self. And he, again, reiterated that he wants to be back with the Lightning. He's hoped that he's shown that he's done enough for the Lightning to try and bring him back. But he probably had the best comments at the end of the day, because, most players will just say, I get it. At the end of the day, it's a business. He said, at the end of the day, I still get to wake up in the morning. My kids will still be there with me, which is just such, nice comments from a guy, who's in that. He's a 4th line guy. He's not a superstar player, but just nice things to hear from a player.
He's one of the best personalities, one of the best just humans in the league. I mean, I've gushed about him before, and I could keep doing it for hours and hours. But he's a very well-spoken, very well-educated, smart dude. I would be happy to have him around for another season. I think he had a bit of a resurgence later on in the year. He had a pretty rough start to the year. I know me and Joe picked on him a little bit, but it took him a while. Rightfully so. I think it was deserved, but it took him a while to get the legs working, get pumping. But I think he had a really strong finish to the year and a really underrated playoffs as well. I mean, he got He got things started. He was the first player to score in Game 1, but of course, I still think he had a really good playoffs. I would be happy to have him back for another year, and same with Corey Perry. Hopefully, he doesn't go cup chasing. I would love to have him back on the fourth line, just like Belmar. I think he had a stronger second half to his year as well, and a really strong playoffs. Perry would be dearly missed. It feels like he's been on this team for like 10 years. It's only been 2.
Hey, he technically broke his 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals streak because
the curse is broken.
In terms of Belly with Belmar, yeah, he played. He had a rough regular season, and he did play very well, I thought, in the playoffs, especially when it came to penalty kill. He played his heart out. That said, especially given his age, I feel like that's a spot that would be better served by someone like Jeannot. You know, you can only carry so many forwards, and I don't like the idea of, there's no salary room in order to like taxi squad guys. So I just don't know if there's going to be room for him, unfortunately. But I would love to have Corey Perry back for another season. It's been stated by many people within the organization that he's one of the most vocal guys in the locker room, despite his somewhat stoic nature when he's on the ice and he doesn't really open his mouth and say a word. He's one of the more motivating players that are on the team, and he's been there, he's done that, and he absolutely showed up for these playoffs as well. So if he's saying that he still has the drive to do it, then I fully believe him, and I think he is a good fit for the Lightning. So I'd love to have Corey Perry back.
And he plays his best hockey when it's the most important, and it's not even just a Tampa thing. It's every team he's ever been on: Montreal, Dallas, Anaheim. He is a playoff performer. We saw it this year, we saw it last year, we saw it the year before it, and we saw it the year before that. We've been a little spoiled with Corey Perry, for better or for worse. But, man, I mean, he's a playoff performer. I would really lament not having him next year.
Well, of course, we want to bring back everybody, but unfortunately, we have to deal with the cap. I mean, listen, if it wasn't for the cap, we would have one of the best teams in NHL history for the last couple of years. I mean, look at guys in the playoffs right now: Andre Palat, Yanni Gourde, some of the guys on the Panthers as well, who I'm blanking on the name right now, been playing so well, and they are doing really well with everybody else. It's been some fun playoffs. I know it's been really disappointing that the Lightning aren't in it right now, but seeing the Florida Panthers beat the Boston Bruins, and now they're one game away from doing a sweep against the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's been quite, and then Seattle. I mean, they won their last game, 6 or 7-2 against the Dallas Stars. There's been some fun games this year.
And took down the Colorado Avalanche. Can't thank them enough.
Sorry, I'm laughing because our producer Eureka just put like a little sad emoji in our chat, and he's someone that that's his second team is Colorado.
Matt just threw him under the bus.
Cut me off guard on that one. Yeah, some of these series have been pretty fun to watch for sure, and we were kind of doing a little bit of pre-show prep, and Matt said something that resonated so true for me. I love rooting for the Lightning. They're a team that I love to root for, and then it's also fun to root for a team that's playing the one that you absolutely hate, and you probably worded it much more eloquently than that. But at the end of the day, screw the Leafs. Let's go Panthers. Okay, for this round, I am a Panthers fan,
and then let's go Devils/Canes after that.
Just Canes.
And right now, at the time of this recording, the Panthers are up 3-0 in the series. I love it. I love it. It feels so good to know that the Leafs can't luck their way into a Stanley Cup Finals when you get outplayed. There's a reason why it's the absolute hardest championship to win in all of sports, and this kind of shows you that even though the Leafs had quite a bit of luck against Tampa, I really think that the Lightning would absolutely have smashed Florida if they ended up playing them, and the Leafs aren't up to task. So let's go Panthers, little brother, and sweep home the Maple Leafs.
And if you're jumping down in the comment section right now to say, "Oh, these guys are so salty," we are absolutely salty.
Yep.
We're still very but you know what? We're Lightning fans, and it's hey, there's the fans in Toronto who are actually wearing the jerseys of every opponent that are rooting against them, which I got a great kick out of as well. That circulated, but. Guys, I think that's going to do it for us in this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us at RBLR Sports or at RBLR Lightning so you don't miss out on future episodes. Be sure to like and subscribe as well. We're going to start getting into all of the UFA, RFA statuses. What are the Lightning going to do this offseason? Hey, could Alex Lafreniere or Capo Caco be coming to the Lightning? Who knows? Make sure you tune into next week's episode to find out if we break some of that stuff down. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk you into the next one. Go Bolts!
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.